Yes. Hi, everyone. Welcome to the Mama Genius Hub podcast. We're back with Erin Vogt. And today we're going to be talking about what is the hot mess mom and what do we do about it. So just a little bit about Erin. She's a former social worker turned business owner. Of course, I forget to move this down below. We're going to start that out. Okay. Oh, the joys of life, right? All right. I'm sorry. A former social worker turned business owner, coach, and intentional mom. Triple certified in health, life, and transformational coaching. Erin overcame the mental health challenges and now shows up as a vital and joyful to her family and clients. Her journey includes building a 5:30 a.m. gym habit, listen to Lee, after 20 years of swearing it was impossible. I hear you on that one about just I've now become an early bird, which I thought was impossible. I don't quite do the gym, but I see the potential. So tell us a little bit, Erin, about your why to what brought you to doing this.
Well, thank you so much, Michelle. It's such a pleasure to be here. I have had a pretty meandered way of getting here into becoming a coach and a business owner. I have been a mom now for almost 12 years. My daughter will be 12 with Boxing Day. And I worked in the nonprofit sector a really long time. I was in the world of administration and social work, and I just love helping people and never really envisioned that I would end up going out on my own. It had always been a dream, but almost a pipe dream. And I had pretty low confidence around that kind of thing. And just thinking, I probably just have to work for someone else. But I also had this really burning dream and being able to be there for my kids no matter what. And I envisioned somehow when I first became a mom, I was like, there's something like wellness coaching out there. And I'd gotten my social work degree and I was at home making applesauce from scratch. And I'm thinking, I was doing all these like presentations and papers and group projects and all this stuff with adults. And now I'm with this little being, but she became my everything. And who knew that I was going to encounter a lot of mental health struggles along the way. So God had a different plan for me. It was basically like, I'm going to take about 8 to 10 years to figure this out and get your feet wet with motherhood and all the things. And then I got into coaching just before, just right in the time of COVID in 2020. I'd left my job on a stress leave December 2019, and grateful that I did that. That was something I'd never done. And personal development was always of huge interest for me for like 20 years at that point. And I just knew there was something more. I was made for more. And I'd reached out to a friend of mine. Her name's Katie. She's a life coach in Northern BC. And our paths had crossed maybe 10 years before that. But I'd followed her on Facebook. And I'm like, I know there's something to this. And online was just kind of getting going at that point, like really strong. And I'm a pretty resourceful person and a risk taker. And so I thought I could jump in and do this. And just, I had no idea how amazing it would be to have this ability to go after my passion, Michelle, and actually really become more of an intentional mom. Because when I say hot mess mom, that's basically what my program is around. Is I was an absolute hot mess mom, and I can share with you a little bit about why I don't love that label, but I'm using it for marketing's sake because I think other women do relate to it. But I actually call it the Hot Mess Mom Makeover because I truly believe that we don't have to sit in it and we can make over with like the tiniest little shifts over time and come through successful and confident and self-assured so we can be who we need to be for our kids.
Now, I want to piggyback off something you said because I think you wasn't necessarily expecting to go this route, but when you said it, I was like, we have to go this route. But you were talking about that inner voice that there's something more. And I want to see if you can pinpoint or like explain that a little bit more because I think there's a lot of women out there who might not realizing that is calling them for more. And what was that like for you?
It was this desire to do things really different. Like, I've always told people I've never once watched a episode of the Kardashians. I call life the Kardashian factor. And I was like, everyone else is watching The Bachelor and The Bachelorette and The Walking Dead and all this stuff. And I'm like, I'm watching Tony Robbins on YouTube on repeat. I'm listening to Brene Brown's Audible books while I'm cleaning my bathroom. I'm taking walks, listening to podcasts of health coaches, and I'm thinking up smoothie recipes at, midnight. Like, my life was very different. I don't fall into the norm. And when I noticed that, I was like, this is what entrepreneurs do. They aren't the ones that are maybe just like settling in. And I've always been the black sheep. I felt that. I actually call myself the purple sheep. 'Cause I don't think black's that fun
I
in
love
terms
that.
of color. And I was like, I just thought things could feel differently. I've always liked public speaking, and also I'm a natural coach. I've always been that person that would listen and have that ear underneath the listening, and so I got trained around it, how to really pull that out of people. And with a social work background, I don't have all the bureaucracy now covering me, that I have all these limits. I actually have full capacity to go in deep with my clients, which I do, and support them at a really impactful level. And so when I say make for more, it wasn't just, hitting a time clock, punching in for a paycheck every 2 weeks. It was like, what's risky, what's different, what's going to give me flexibility to be what my husband and I want my career to be for our family. And also, how can I make an impact that is an exponential growth? I love the idea of the ripple. I remember thinking about, I don't know where I heard it, probably Brene Brown, but the idea of ripples in water, and how you throw a pebble in there and it just creates these ripples. And that is what happens every time I meet, beautiful people like you through Family Circle, right? It's a connection, it's a ripple, and all of that just manifests together and creates something really beautiful.
I keep every time you talk about, like, I take this one little tidbit out of what you're saying, and I want to elaborate on that because you brought up what career would be right for the way you phrased it, and I can't even get the exact wording, but was how you said about you and your husband. And I
Mm,
know a lot of in this realm, especially entrepreneur people, struggle with that communication. I know I'm guilty of that as well in terms of how to rectify that between your desires and your spouse's desire and how that all works for your family. So I wonder if you can shed some light onto those, because I know as you were talking about wanting more, that there's more people, obviously, if they're listening to this, that they might have that desire too. But then the fear of like, what is the spouse going to say? What are the
yeah,
people around me going to say? Starts to creep in and kind of like suppresses that back down.
absolutely. For me, what we had a really interesting way of getting here. So my Coles Notes version is this: we lived in 3 different provinces in Canada in 5 years, and when my youngest was 5 months old, we moved from one province, northern British Columbia, to southern Alberta, back home. And my husband was actually doing a designation for school, so that he was working full time, plus we had a baby, plus he had to do this demonstration project. And it was almost a master's thesis for becoming a property assessor. And so the sacrifice that we made early on in our marriage and early on in parenthood was for Ryan. And it was massive. Like, he lived away from me for 9 months and came home on the weekends, and I gave him a honey-do list. And I was like, here's baby, and I'm exhausted and all the things. And it was just chaotic. We made it work, but wrap in that a whole bunch of mental health struggles and like lost desires and expectations I'd had on myself. And I think if other women are hearing this, and you know that there's something like yearning, is it worth having a conversation with your husband, with your partner? Absolutely it is. The amount of time you're going to spend in your career working for another person or working for an income, whether that be a side hustle, a business, a job, it is the biggest part of your life next to parenting, and it has to infuse joy into your life. Um, there is just so much to this, that if you are wanting something more find that out, what that is, look at the details, and basically enroll your partner in the vision of what you see this being for yourself, but also for your family. You have to enroll them in the vision of that. And that can often be hard because it feels like we're having to ask, which I did, of course, but those conversations are life-changing. And I can pinpoint exactly what that was like. I chose to talk to Ryan about going back to school in April of 2020 with an American dollar in Canada and everything crashing around us, including the world. And he was like, what now? You want to do what? Like,
Oh, yes.
and I had my ducks in a row, due diligence, had been researching this stuff for a while. And we decided to go for it. And so I think if anyone can do this during a pandemic, homeschooling kids, getting certifications and learning the ropes as you go, if I can do this, anybody can do it.
It sounds like we had like a similar experience with that, except I didn't do the due diligence that you probably did. So I came and said, here, I want to do this, but I have no plan.
And that's okay too, right?
But it's still like worked itself out. You know, it's coming to fruition. It's working itself out. So it's like, but if I had like just suppressed that one more time, you know what I'm saying is that if we don't follow that. And so that's actually the whole premise of this podcast anyhow, is bringing that genius out of mom so that we're listening and hearing what other moms have already done. Because when you see the possibilities, all of a sudden it is your possibility as well. And that's like the whole purpose of this genius of the Mama Genius Hub podcast, is finding that genius inside yourself and then being that role model to inspire kids to find theirs. And again, like you said, it's all about finding that joy and that happiness, because when you are doing that, then you can inspire. Mm-hmm. And I love that so much that you brought that up. And I had another question, but I went on my tangent that I forgot it. But let's just circle back to this idea of like, because you've mentioned, you've alluded to some of the mental health and things that you went through. And I know that I'm sure a lot of women out here are hiding with that in them as well. And so I'd love for you to speak out on that, because I think the more we unshed and have these conversations, again, it's realizing what others have gone through, and yet kept moving forward. Because that's what this is about. It's just about deciding something and moving forward however it happens. And so I'd love to hear a little bit more about your story on that.
Sure. So many years of my life, I'm 42 now, until I was 36, I didn't recognize or was officially diagnosed that I had ADHD. That was one. It was a big one because my time management was way off, my priorities. I had a lot of shame. I was nodding a lot, pretending I understood what people were saying and doing and asking of me all through school, growing up with it, especially as a girl. ADHD does not present nearly the same in young girls as it does with boys. And of course, growing up 80s, 90s, was not recognized, right? So going through my 20s was a dumpster fire. I'll just say it. It was a lot of life lessons, very challenging. What do we call them? My coach called them challenge moments. Character enhancers. And depression was not far from that. It was postpartum depression twice. I had depressive episodes before that. And anxiety is a big part of mine and Ryan's life. My husband has lived with anxiety as long as I've known him, even as young as a teenager. And we've dealt with the medications. We've dealt with the side effects of that. We've dealt with trouble trying to get pregnant because of that. We've dealt with breakdowns, breakthroughs. I'm pretty much an open book around mental health, and I'm very passionate about it for the sense of children being able to see you in your mess. I'm very passionate about your kids not hiding the fact that you're going through a hard time, because it makes you stronger as a family unit. It makes you more cohesive and connected, and it gives your kids a chance to see what reality is. When we raise them in a bubble that is not going to support them, we think we're protecting them, and we're actually making it worse, because the kids inevitably have this sense that something's wrong with mom or dad. They want to be there for you. They don't know how. And half the time it's this, I just want to come and hug you, mom. I just, make a bracelet for you, make a card for you, and here, mommy, I made you a smoothie. their give is so important, and their connection to that moment. We know it's not going to last forever. And there's a time and a place where you reach out and you get professional support and help. Absolutely. But if they're the day-to-day moments where you're having, panic attacks, which I've gone through as well, and I speak very openly about, I don't have them right currently, but last December I probably had 4 in the span of 2 weeks. And I didn't hide it anymore, because shame is one of the biggest components of
Yes.
that, right? What's gonna make it more prominent is shame and guilt around that. So mental health is, I don't love Mental Health Day. I don't love all of these like awareness campaigns, to be honest with you, because I think it needs to be talked about every single day, not just specific Bell Let's Talk days. Um, and you deserve support, mom. If you're listening to this, dad, you deserve support. If you know someone that's struggling, reach out, give them that support, show them what's possible. In Alberta, we have something called a distress line. There's distress lines all over North America, I'm sure the world. It's not hard to Google things. It's not hard to find answers, but please don't compare yourself through social media. Go to the right source. And if you just need a neutral venting space for your mental health, call one of those lines and they will listen to you. I actually used to volunteer on those lines as well, as a social worker. And I can tell you, half the time, people just want an ear to listen.
I love that so much because sometimes we just don't have it. And I love the idea of you reiterating not masking how we feel in front of our kids. So I have to admit, even on Saturday, I don't know, I woke up just so tired. We had my daughter's swim meet, and then eventually I had to take the little one home, and it just like driving was just like my brain would not function. And like I
Mm,
was just like tears were just coming down my face just trying to get home because I was just so tired. It was only like a 10-minute drive. So then I made her mad. I'm like, just be quiet, and like yelled top of my lungs. And then she sat down. And as soon as we just got home, I just went and laid down. Well, I had to go pick up my son um, a couple hours later.
yeah.
And I missed the turn and ended up having to drive downtown Milwaukee instead of taking the shortcut, adding an extra half an hour to my route. And
Oh,
then I said 2 lanes to get over for the 794. Of course, and I was 1 over, but it was supposed to be no, they said it was I thought it was only 1, and it was supposed and I was like 1 over, but no, it's 2 lanes, and I couldn't get over before. Now I'm downtown Milwaukee, like, trying to, like, get back to go the other direction. And I
and you're
just, like,
freaking out and you're
and
like,
I literally just screamed at the top of my lungs. I think my son just started, like, almost like he didn't want to, but he, like, could feel just the laughter coming up because he was just, and then we talked about it. Like, I was like, "Thank you for just letting me get that out." And then we almost kind of laughed about it afterwards. And I'm like, "I hope I didn't scare you," but like, I didn't know what else to do to release that so we could make it home safely. And so I think letting
totally.
them know and just having that conversation though afterwards. So like once after I took my nap, I actually did go talk to my daughter as well and said, I'm sorry for upsetting you and stuff, but I was just so exhausted. I just needed to like lay down. And so now I can have this conversation with you and give you some hugs and apologize for it. And so I think that's what it comes down to is no matter what we're doing or how much we think we're like, there's no perfect to this. And we're
God,
so human that when I look at all this personal development and everything, what I'm looking for is more calm in my mind.
yes.
And the way I saw it was want to hear your take on this, but was like a couple years ago, like I could just hear the voices and the drama in my head, judgment, left and right. But going through and doing as you were talking about, like with the walks and the podcasts and listening to this and trying to retrain our brain because we are geared towards survival and that voice telling us to do these things so we protect ourselves. But as we work towards that positivity and that stuff, I no longer feel that constant drama. Instead, like you said, like I had to release the whatever came up, but that
Yeah.
it didn't last. Like, because for me, that could have lasted 2 days in the past, like that situation. Whereas like okay, it's released. We talked it out and now we're moving on. And so I don't
Yeah.
know if you've had similar experiences like that as well.
Oh, absolutely. And there's nobody that is listening to this that has not had those moments where, like, this is what I used to do is we have an attached garage, and I remember just grabbing the door, running into the garage, and just screaming when I was like really, like things were really hard. Um, Or I used to grab a pillow and just scream into my pillow. I used to punch pillows. We had a punching bag that was helpful during COVID for sure. Your kids, though, um, it's okay for them to see and hear that you're upset, obviously not at them. We do that though, let's be honest. We snap at our kids, that is reality. But the biggest thing that you said, and I want to emphasize this, is that talk afterward, right? I can't tell you how many times we lay down and bedtime and I'll just own it and just flat out say, today, how snarky, and that wasn't fair to you. Or you were snarky to your sister, she did something, blah, blah, blah. And we just talk about it and we just take the judgment off of it. If you just use these words, just get curious.
Yeah.
Or three of my favorite words are, isn't that interesting? So when you're noticing in your head, you're like, you can almost, when you can kind of tell that you're at that point where you're almost watching yourself and you're like, oh, this is a train wreck. She can't stop.
Nope, never been there. Nope, nope, nope.
It's like the Truman Show or something, like everyone's watching you. I've had those moments, and I often find that shame loves to crawl in there and it's like, ooh, you're just so terrible as a mom, right? And it used to eat me alive. And I'm saying this really casually, but I want you to know how much work I've done around this and overcoming that shame and those triggers. But if that is where you're at, I want you to recognize these three words. Isn't that interesting? If you can say that to yourself in the moment, it catches you, and then you go, oh, that's a pattern.
And I think that we use the word trigger, but I love looking at them in terms of asking yourself, why am I being triggered right now? And
Why?
usually it's something that's reacting. And I think by identifying and working and all the work that we've both done is now the chaos in the head, like that's exasperate, like that's gone almost in terms of like, yes, they're still gonna like we're never not gonna have these emotional moments or feelings passing through us or stuff. The question though is how long are they lasting? How long is that voice in your head still beating yourself up for whatever you did yesterday, or you said that at a meeting, or you said that to your kids, and
Yeah,
instead of like beating yourself up for it, it's like we, as we're saying, is going and having that conversation with them when you're ready, after you've had the break, after you've realized the feelings have passed. But it comes down to also just taking that accountability. And I think
totally.
modeling that for our kids, because we're human. We're going to get tired. We're going to not eat enough. We're going to have moments where it's just like, yeah, should have said that. I know that, but what do I do now? And again, that's when we take that accountability and then we model that for them because now I see my kids doing the same thing. Yeah, mom, I really shouldn't have said that to you. That wasn't the nicest. And that's what I feel like we're working towards. And that's why I want to have these conversations is how do we do that? And the how is by finding and listen, as you said, listen to that curiosity and starting to identify it. And then following your curiosity, say, now what? Because as soon as you identify it and you say the now what, and I love the saying, as soon as the teacher will come. And
Mm.
so, like, for instance, those of you who might have identified something, listen to this podcast. This podcast might be the teacher for you at this particular moment for you, if it comes in your path at the right
Totally.
time or however it is. But
Yeah.
so the first step is not to focus on the how or how you can change, is just the identification and then leading with that curiosity as we go out into it. And I think,
Yeah, absolutely. And I loved how you mentioned the time frame. So one of the things as a transformation coach that I really like to just kind of make wrap this in a bow for somebody is talking about, you're on this side of the bridge and you're wanting to walk over here. And it is a really long distance to get to that other side of the bridge. And so having someone alongside just to even get you on the bridge, maybe even just holding the guardrail at that point, maybe taking like 2 steps, but recognizing that something's going to scare you in the moment and you're going to take 2 steps back. And even though you've only taken 3 steps forward. And so when you're looking at that, you're seeing, okay, I'm in breakdown in these back 2 steps, but how long do I want to stay in breakdown? So what we do is we use a variety of techniques and really getting deep into like subconscious type thoughts and feelings, understanding how your thoughts really map out the behaviors and habits that you have, and understanding how your thoughts can be changed within just an instant. So if you can take your time frame and you can condense that breakdown time frame, and you go from breakdown into breakthrough, I'm telling you, I have my friend Katie I mentioned on the phone here, or sorry, on the call here. She and I are constantly messaging like, colossal breakdown. We're like, well, how long were you in it? Oh my gosh, that would normally take me 2 weeks to get over that moment. And now it's 2 hours, Michelle. Sometimes it's 2 minutes, right?
Yes.
Like what used to be 2 weeks or 2 months for me, that was colossal, is now perspective shifting and just noticing like, zoop. And then on the other side of any breakdown, my friends, is always a breakthrough. Always, always, always a breakthrough.
I love that so much. And I just really so glad that we like emphasize it on this show today, because I want people to know, want you out there in the audience to know, what are we even looking for when we think about this? Because we keep saying, oh, give yourself grace in this, but what does that actually look like? And I feel like you really broke that down here in terms of that we're really looking for our calmness and how long it takes us to recover from things, because you're going to throw a tantrum. Your kids are still going to throw tantrums. Like, that is reality. But how long does it last? That's what we're starting to identify as we make these perspective switches. And before we run out of time, because we're getting pretty close, I want to run through our 5 questions we're going to ask Erin before she gets to leave.
Sure.
So number 1, share a book or favorite resource that has had a significant impact on your journey as a mama.
Okay. Super quick, because I could talk forever. Brene Brown, Daring Greatly. There is a chapter in here about parenting. It's about the wholehearted parent. And let me just read this to you. Who we are and how we engage with the world are much stronger predictors of how our children will do than what we know about parenting. Are you the adult that you want your child to grow up to be?
It's so true, because they do not care what we say. They are watching what we do.
Yeah, it's the
End of
mimicking.
story. And I love Brene Brown, who, as she holds, like, picture your hands together and you have this little flame inside your hands, and that's what you're protecting. And so you get to choose who surrounds that flame and who you're going to put your boundaries up to get. But she has so much goodness. Love Daring Greatly. Number 2 for you. What is a special family tradition that brings joy, or a ritual that brings joy and encourages connection in your house?
I love this question. So it's funny. We are a sporty family, and my kids discovered Dude Perfect years ago, Dude Perfect videos, and they're all about like the trick shots, and like they just do these goofy things. And every week they come out with a video. And so the girls it's on YouTube, and the girls are always like, yes, we got to watch it. And so we'll sit down as a family and watch them or rewatch them. They just are straight up joy. They make the girls think differently. They're risk takers, go-getters, they're little cheerleaders, very brave athletes. And my husband and I love to work out too and try new things. And so it's always just like, the Dude Perfect thing is just a thing in our house. And the other is smoothies and waffles. We are all about the smoothies. Our girls will come home from a like crazy long practice, and I'll have like this awesome meal made, and they're like, I just want a smoothie. I recognize them, like, all we do is eat smoothies.
I think I'm the only one that does smoothies all the time, but my son has done it. Like, they make their own breakfast chart, and so he does smoothies at least a week too, cupping. And my husband actually watched me make one this morning. I kind of just like poured some chia seeds and stuff. He's like, oh, you got a real recipe there, don't you? I'm like, yep, just kind of make it up as I go.
Make it up as you go. Love it.
So number 3. Now this is where we're opening up the conversation, because I've noticed, and I even, like you said with your marketing, calling the Hot Mess Mama, I say the busy mama. However, we're both in the idea of that's how we've identified ourselves, but how do we change that? So a lot of times when we ask the question, how are you doing? We will answer, I'm busy, blah, blah, blah. So I want your take on how to change that conversation.
I love this question because I'm not a small talk person, and I don't love the question, how are you? I think there's so many different lame ways that people will say that, and there's so many beautiful ways that you can ask questions. And so it's not even so much the answer, Michelle, as what's the question. So even if you're talking with your friend, like, what's got you excited right now? What has you pumped up for Christmas? What are some of the, what's like one of the top things that you're doing for Christmas this year? Or because when you say how are you, it's basically when you see someone in line at the grocery store, I'm like, hey, how are you? Good, how are you? Okay, see you later.
Pretty much.
What did that do? Right? And so, my kids, I don't love when they say the word good. When I'm like, how was school today? I don't use that anymore. I'm always like, so who'd you help today? Or who helped you? Or what pumped you up about math class today? Because I know there's certain things that she doesn't love about it. It's trying to just frame it. It's just the framing of any sentence that you ask. And so, how are you? You're never going to get the right response, first of all, because no one's going to be like, I'm exhausted. I haven't slept in days. I wish that this menopause was going away, but it's not. It's just starting, and my kids are driving me crazy. No one's going to say that. They're going to be like, I'm good. Yeah, we're busy.
I love that so much. But the voice in your head, like, this is what I really want to say, but I'm good.
How are you really? Actually, Jenna Kutcher has a book out called How Are You Really? I think that's what it's called. And so I haven't read it yet, but I keep hearing about, like, yeah, what if you were to say how you really were, right? But why can't we just talk about things and frame it in a way that's like getting our personality going?
Well, even as you were asking those questions, like, the heart's like, oh, I wouldn't mind answering that. But like, how are you? It's like, oh, do I have to answer that again?
It's very HR-ish. I don't know. That's just me, but
we got number 4 for you, since I know we're running out of time. Describe genius, what genius means to you, and how do you feel when you're living in your genius zone?
Okay, so genius to me means expressing joy authentically. For my girls, they are creative. They are cheer athletes. We were just at a competition out of town, and seeing them in their genius is that focus, is that camaraderie, that timing, the teamwork, and then just the laughter on the way home and having fart jokes, right? Like, that is the genius that I see in kids. And we're seeing them, like, they're struggling with something with math, and then all of a sudden they're doodling on the side and they like knock out this beautiful picture. For me, that's genius. It's like taking a look at what they really excel in and are passionate about in that moment, and like living in that and expressing themselves in it. For me as a mom, I'm not a genius baker. I attempt to, I try, but I sure do love doing podcasts and playing on Canva and having deep conversations with girlfriends, and being an usher at my church on Sundays. I feel like those are my authentic spaces where I can be myself and just light up other people's worlds if I can. And sometimes it's leaving a really nice voice message for somebody who's going through a hard time. You know what your genius is. So I would just say, go for it. Don't hold yourself back. The only one holding yourself back is you.
I love that. And last question for you is, you kind of touched on a little bit already, but how do you encourage your children or child to explore new skills or passions and live in their genius?
Relatability. I think if you can relate it to something they're already really passionate or good at, and then kind of just show them that challenge is just a portion of it, it's not the entire thing is different and new. They generally know what they need to do or how to show up for something, because kids are generally more authentic. And so they'll just know, okay, well, this is a very different way of looking at it. And it may be a different subject, it may be a different skill or anything. But if you can relate it to something they're already really good at or passionate about, it increases their confidence level around it as a foundation. And I think after that, they can just throw their sparkle in. One thing, my daughter is 8, my youngest, and she's obsessed with cleaning and tidying right now. And so I'm not disputing that at all. I'm loving it.
My house.
But there's certain times it's become a little obsessive, right? Like I'm in the bed and she's making it, right? So like, let's just calm it down a little bit and like just kind of just we're gonna go to the kitchen now with that and clean that part up because that will be really fun, right? And so just tiny little tweaks. I made a mention earlier is like when I was promoting this, I was like, small hinges swing big doors. So the tiniest little shift that you can make for your kids and helping them see that, they are going to swing those big doors and notice that and have those successes themselves.
Love that so much. And so we're running completely out of time. So I just want everyone to give everyone one last tip and tell them how they can get a hold of you as well.
Thank you so much. Well, you can reach me. My website is erinvogt.com, ERINVOGT. And I'm on Instagram at Erin Coaches, or I have a Facebook group called Creating Freedom for Moms. And I like to talk about the Hot Mess Mom as just a way to say, listen, you don't have to necessarily label yourself as that. If you're in it, it's okay. But let's just say you're facing hot messes, and we're all about the makeover part of it. So if you want to, increase and go from like exhausted to energized, I'm your girl. I'm happy to chat with you anytime. And I just really thank you for this time, Michelle.
Well, thank you so much, Erin, for coming on. And I hope that we provide everyone in the audience some value today. And just, it really is about just shifting that perspective. And I loved how you said swinging the doors wide open. And I hope that that helped describe what does it look like when the doors swing wide open? And what are you actually looking for inside as you're feeling these shifts? And what should you start to notice is you're starting to notice the voices calming down. You're starting to notice you're able to respond more than react to your kids, or that you realize you did something and you take the accountability for it. Those are the shifts and the things we're looking for, is that identification. So I want to leave you on that note, and we'll see you all next time. Bye, everyone.
Thanks, Michelle.